Today, we have Jasmine here. And I tell you what, I am really excited because Jasmine is doing something which is quite different and I really don't know much about. So I'm going to have to ask Jasmine to like really sort of connect to me more. But it's such a weird feeling because I got on Zoom and I've just gone, I felt like there's just an energy coming to me, and it's not an oppressive energy. It's an energy of vitality and an energy of I'd say warmth, but it's not warm. Yeah, I'd say just like a really natural energy and a really, really nice feeling. And within 2 minutes, I'm just feeling really at home. And I'm calling Jasmine darling. I've gone, oh darling, oh no, what am I saying? I'm so embarrassed. I'm embarrassing myself. And I said, it's just lovely. It's just like a feeling of love and feeling comfort and feeling homely. And I said, okay, I'm gonna call it what it is. I'm not trying, I'm not in love, but wow, what a privilege to just turn up, in somebody's, well, you're in my kitchen actually, but you turn up in my kitchen and I just go, oh, wow. Oh, I can't go outside because of COVID-19 much, although Thailand's, doing pretty well with the situation. And I just feel like I'm, totally much more connected with a person than I could be, sometimes having coffee with a friend. So, thank you. Jasmine, I'm sorry, I've probably taken away some of your welcome to Discover Energy Work. And yeah, what a lovely smile. Can you sort of introduce yourself a little bit, or just tell me how you're doing? It's both of you, okay?
Yeah. And firstly, thank you for sharing and reflecting that back, because it's, you can never hear it enough. And I think especially with the world the way that it is now, that sense of, that question of belonging and feeling that sense of home and warmth and safety, it's becoming more and more important, and a big part of my work. I didn't realize when I sort of began, but a big part of it was really bringing people back to a belonging of home to this earth, and remembering that this is, the sacred mother, the big she, and she's always here, and we all belong to her. And so I'm touched to hear that. That I'm able to share that presence with you.
Do you do this full time?
I do. I started.
No. I've got a question. I've got loads of questions, and the first thing is like if I think of society and bus driver, accountant, chief executive, sales manager are going like, flaky person that talks about forests and trees, that's not something you're going to choose. So something's happened, and that's the key. And I don't mean I mean, yes, you're flaky in many people's eyes. I don't think you're flaky. I know there's a story, and the story's given it great meaning. So where does that start?
Where does the story start? Yeah, I really have to give credit to my parents, who were not, they weren't environmentalists, they weren't activists. By our cultural standard of normal, they were normal people. My dad worked in the corporate environment. My mum was a stay-at-home mum who looked after myself and my brother, and
in Hong Kong.
And yet she had, in Hong Kong, that's right. Yeah. And she had a real flavor for craft and design and entrepreneurial, and can't even say that word, entrepreneurial skills. And so actually my parents split up when I was 8. And so we were raised primarily by my mother in Hong Kong. And our childhood was really as urban as Hong Kong is. We grew up in the New Territories in a village setting where my brother and I, we went out and played, and the only instruction was just get back before dinner. And so we were climbing trees, we were rescuing, animals that we found, stray dogs, and swimming in rivers.
Yeah, I
And
think many people don't realize that Hong Kong, there's this concrete jungle. And with the photos you get from Hong Kong, it's all urban, urban, urban. But there's actually
yes,
these incredibly beautiful countryside parts to Hong Kong.
absolutely. Yeah, it's 44% country park.
Right. And it's like 44% amazing. But I mean, like New Territories is like just villages, very sort of very open, very two steps from the nature.
Yeah.
Might be trees, might be brush, and certainly hills.
Yeah. And we were really lucky to have that just literally right outside our doorstep. And why I'm really grateful to my mom really was that as much as she was the type of woman, she's beautiful, beautiful woman who would get her nails done, once every 2 weeks. She would go to the hair salon twice a week to get her hair done up in a nice way. She would wear beautiful dresses and jewelry. She was very, very feminine. And yet she was raised on a farm, and she was a farm girl at heart. And so it was really quite natural for her to just let my brother and I play in nature and develop our relationship with the natural world. And whether or not she knew it consciously, it really formed the way that I became as an adult, or at least my connection back with the earth. And my dad, who lived in Singapore at the time, he lived on a sailing boat. He loves to be on the water and sail. And so when we would go and spend time with him, we would be on the water, sailing to islands and camping out. And so I had almost the best of both worlds. I had the land, I had the ocean, and I had my parents sort of anchoring both sides of that. Again, whether or not they did it consciously, they were sharing their love and their innate sort of need to be in these elements, and we were able to receive that as children. And my mother, who still lives in the same village where we grew up as children, again, that was a blessing, because we would move back to Singapore and spend time with my dad, and then come back to Hong Kong. And of course, when I went off and studied in the UK, would come back, periodically every few years or months. And I would see the village where we grew up change over time. The trees that I remember climbing as a child, they were chopped down to build another village house. The river that we used to go and swim in and try and catch fish and pluck the rush and the grass, it would be filled in with concrete to prevent flooding. The marshland where my dog used to run away into and come back stinking of dead fish, it was filled in with concrete to build a car park. And I remember feeling that pinch of sadness and nostalgia, and that just, it really did feel like a loss for me. And as a child, the sense of loss was like, oh, I can't climb that tree anymore.
Right.
And yet it was remembering the curves of the tree, the texture of how it felt in my hand, how it held me when I lay on the tree, or, the shade that it gave, the fruit that it bore. And I didn't realize until much later, when I was an adult, really, that had such a powerful, it really led me into the work that I was doing in studying geography.
It sounds like that these were your friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That there's a certain natural, and I'd say like childlike, imaginary friend, but like the tree is my friend, and I'm going to lean on the tree, and how are you today, tree?
Yeah.
And did you, you must have gone to school and noticed that other kids were different, or not really? Do you just hide that part, or?
I don't know if I was conscious at that age, the difference. I did notice that a lot more of my friends that I would play with at that age didn't live in the types of places that I did. And I do remember actually once suggesting to one of my friends who lived in a very urban area, and she had a mountainside outside of her place, that we go and climb the mountain. And we ended up sliding off this part that had a landslide, and I got all these scrapes and cuts on my arms. But to me, that was a sense of normality, is that you go out and explore. And, we went on a trail and our parents didn't know where we were, which is so rare these days. The distance in which children roam or play has reduced in the last 30 years by 90%. And a big part of the importance of our connection with nature is that it's done unsupervised, especially for children. And I'm so grateful that I had the experience of all the hours and nights and times that I was out in nature unsupervised. I didn't have an adult telling me, this is what you do, or this is the name of that tree. It was all to do with my relationship and my sense, and that being embodied in remembering what it feels like to climb that tree or swim in that river or sit on that rock.
Well, we used to have a gang. We used to just go out as a gang of us and just go into the dell or go into the woods. And, I mean, it was like a little group of bandits there.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And honestly, we terrorized aspects of the natural world. And I'm not proud of it. And I don't condone behavior of what we did. And so it's interesting because when you suggested the relationship was very friendly, it was. But the way that I relate to the natural world feels much more like a sibling. You have that deep love and you have that connection, and yet your sibling will piss you off and you will get into fights, and you might shove them around and push them back, and they'll push you back, and you might call each other names. And what I mean by that is that it didn't feel like my relationship with the natural world was really tender, or that I needed to hold it with care. And
it sounds earthy. Yeah, it doesn't sound like what some people might say, tie a scarf around your head and hold a crystal.
It was rough and tumble. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I knew, I remember the very first time I was conscious of the relationship not being just one-sided, that there was the earth speaking back to me, and that I was being taught in sometimes quite forceful ways of the consequences of our interaction with the natural world.
Look, wait a minute. You jump. I'm just curious. So suddenly you've gone from being a kid to there's this communication where you're learning. So was that sudden, or did something happen in between, or?
No, it was when I was a kid. Actually, it was just after my parents had split up and we moved back to Hong Kong with my mom, and she would, every weekend she joined these hiking groups where, there might be 20 or 30 odd people going on a hiking trip, and we might finish at one of the barbecue sites where people would sort of make a barbecue, have lunch and cook their noodles. And I remember this one particular place, it was surrounded by paperbark trees. And I don't know if you're familiar with the paperbark. They're originally from Australia, and they have a very flaky outer bark that you can peel off just like paper. And I remember collecting bark from the tree because I just found it so fascinating. And we just finished a barbecue, and so there were leftover, fires and embers going, and we had the barbecue forks. And I remember looking at the barbecue fork that was sitting in the fiery embers, and then looking next to me at the paperbark tree with its flaky, peely bits. And I thought, ooh, I wonder what would happen if I took the barbecue fork, the red hot barbecue fork, and put it next to the tree, and what would it do to the paper? So I took the fork out and I sort of pressed it into the bark of the tree. And of course, the hot ends of the fork singed right through the bark of the tree and made the two black holes. And I thought, oh, this is exciting. And so I went back and left the fork in the fire to heat it up and then do it again. And I did this maybe 3 times. And I think on the 4th time, I really got it to a point. I remember needing to coach myself into being patient, to wait long enough that the fork was hot enough that it could really burn through a thick layer of the bark. And I did, I waited until I saw it glowing red, and I pressed it into the tree. And this time what I did was actually lean on the barbecue fork a bit, and I was holding it with my hands. And I remember thinking, I wonder if this hurts the tree. And literally the next moment, my hand slid down the barbecue fork to the red hot part of the barbecue, and it burned my hands. And there was my answer. Was the reply, it was the response from the natural world saying, you wondered if it was painful? This is how it feels.
I'm just fascinated because you're 8, and I know a little bit, I'm a psychologist, I have a psychology degree. I'm not a psychotherapist, but at 8 years old, your brain isn't that developed. And you got it. You got it at 8, or you got it later?
I got it later. I remember feeling fear and a high degree of respect in that moment. I mean, I was in pain, and I felt like, I got it. I asked the question, and then I slid, and I was like, okay. And I never did that again. Right. But it was only until much later when I think, and that memory really stuck with me, that I looked back and I was like, that was the first time that I consciously was aware of there was that dialogue happening. And
it's moved me. I feel it across my shoulders. I just feel like
same.
I feel like, oh wow, that's moving in that, you made the connection, that you got the shock, but also you got, oh wow, like, I've been a little bit of a torturer and a meanie, but now I know. And oh wow.
And that really is that sense of, that embodied feeling. I can still feel it, that moment that I slid, and that, it's like the feeling when you slip on something, and that, it is.
When we talk about defense mechanisms, did you rationalize, or did you, sort of try to sort of explain it away? Like, this can't have been real later on, or you were just convinced?
I don't know. I think at the time it was a little bit like, when you've done something naughty and mum gives you that look, and you just know, like, uh-oh, like she's mad. And then that moment of like, okay, I get it. I get it. I don't think that the memory was present until I really started to dive into a lot more of the work that I'm doing now. And these memories came back up that I was like, even back then it was already starting. And
did you try to make amends with the tree as an 8-year-old? I'm curious, because I think it would be very sort of
I don't know if I did.
Sort of try to, okay, I'm going to give you a sweetie, or, here's something of mine. I'm so sorry,
I know. And I wish I had a lovely story about how I went and hugged the tree and said I was sorry, but I probably didn't. And maybe what I'm doing now is making up for, the relationship that I had back then. And, really remembering that full respect and reverence. And then yet remembering that.
Have you gone back to the tree? Is it still there?
Oh, I don't remember exactly which barbecue spot it was, but actually I do a lot of work with that tree, and it's still in my life.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, because I think like already, like, we've uncovered a fascinating anecdote of, like, oh wow, I'm 8 years old and I've really learned something, but that doesn't necessarily form whole life direction. So was there other and you went to an international school in Hong Kong, I'm guessing?
Yes, I did, in Hong Kong and Singapore. And so it's interesting. The way that I view it now, and remembering I had my mother's voice in my head saying, that how I'm so stubborn, and how as a child this was a quality that was not good. And yet I feel like it's my stubbornness that has brought me to a sense of resilience in keeping on this path, and that sense of rightness in me, not a rightness of society or the conditioned roles that we have for young people or men or women. There's always been, and I don't know where it comes from really, but there's always been a sense of that doesn't feel right. And I've followed that. And I remember my two favorite subjects in school were geography, because I really did have this fascination for the lifeness that was the earth. You know, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be three things. I wanted to be a volcanologist because I loved volcanoes and the idea that the tectonic plates were moving and that formed the Earth's crust, and they pushed together and the lava came out, and it was the movement and the aliveness of this Earth planet that we live on. And so volcanologist was one, a vet was another, and a therapist, a counselor. And I remember thinking, like, these are such random things. How can I ever find how they could come together as one? And interestingly, again, when I started this journey with Kimbali, I looked back and I was like, actually, what I'm doing now is bringing in elements of all three of those parts, and actually, in understanding of the earth in a different way, not necessarily a scientific or a rational, and then bringing in the therapeutic element of coming back, having our bodies and our souls and our emotional bodies back into the earth. And, with the love of animals, is reminding people of our reverence and our, animals are also children of the earth. And so it's been interesting to kind of, again, look back and be like, even back then it was already forming. And
so you said a word, Kimbali. Kimbali. You said this word, and you said like Kimbali, yes. And you're like, and like simple-mindedly me, I've gone like vet, volcanologist, and therapist. That's what Kimbali is. But I of course I don't think that, but I've gone, it's to do with that. And I'm already like curious. So did you meet a teacher? Did you face a problem and then slowly sort of search for the solution, and eventually it was?
So really after I finished my studies, I came back to Hong Kong and knew that I wanted to work in a role that I was giving back. And for me, it was a charity of any form, and luckily I managed to find a job in an animal welfare-based charity, which is great because I was combining my love for animals, and essentially it was bringing therapy dogs into local government schools in Hong Kong and conducting an English lesson while having a therapy dog present, and really educating children who didn't have contact with dogs, living in government housing estates. And, sort of with the element of teaching them English was also the very strong underlying message of, let's care for these animals because they have feelings just like we do. And so I was working there for quite a while, and felt the need and the readiness to expand into this sense of, hang on, if we're not taking care of our planet, then how can we take care of our animals? And so looked into where I could work that was focusing more on environmental conservation. And so I found a local organization that was also a permaculture farm in Hong Kong. Okay. And they did education-based programs for children, for corporates. And they were really very solution-based, so this is the issue, what can we do as an alternative? And that really satiated that need of mine to gather the skills and the tools that are going to be necessary to transform the way that we have a relationship with the natural world. Now, when I was there, as happy as I was becoming frustrated because I was finding myself, if I had a group of 30 people, whether it was children or adults, I would find that if I was lucky, maybe 30% would be engaged. They would be understanding, the issues that we're facing, our world, our oceans, our forests, our animals, our planet, socially, all of that. And they would feel empowered and engaged enough to go off and do something about it. Whether it was a child that was like, I'm gonna ask my mom to, to get me a solar lamp so that I can read my books there. All of these other beautiful examples. And yet the majority of the room, I would find them with a look of apathy and a look of, it was a bit of like, okay, so when's lunch going to be ready for us?
Right.
And I questioned, the self-critic in me is very strong. And so I questioned myself. I was like, maybe I'm just a terrible teacher. Maybe I need to go and do, 3 degrees in education and then come back and share this knowledge. And maybe I need to tell them scarier things about what's happening to the planet so that it'll shake them into waking up.
Right.
And after all of that, I went back to why this was so important for me. And it was that childhood that I had. I'd built a relationship with the natural world. And that's why it impacted me so much when I would see, not just in my home place, in my home country, what was happening to the rivers and to the waters and to the animals. But I saw that connection and I felt that connection. And all of a sudden there I was expecting that everyone would get it. And yet, we're living in increasingly urban spaces where people aren't necessarily able or invited to have that connection themselves. So my journey shifted from education to facilitating connection with the natural world.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to understand why I'm almost feeling that you're sad. I'm almost feeling like, wow, it's like I can feel vitality, but there's this underlying sadness there. And you know what I think it is? I think you open yourself up to being vulnerable. And that's what I'm feeling. It's like, well, I feel it, and I do feel that part of the success of the city life is our ability to not open up and be vulnerable, to walk past that person who's, fallen over, or walk past the beggar or whatever. And beggar's not necessarily the best example, because there's, without a doubt, there's some scams going on there. But I feel like in the big city, and having lived, 12 years in Hong Kong, I'm currently in Thailand, which is I'm just so in nature. It's just so beautiful. I used to listen down to, the traffic going by, and the ambulance or the fire engines going by, and the traffic light going.
Yeah.
Now it's frogs. I just got a frog, or birds. Wow. I'm like, this is so nice. I just welcome it. And then locals say, oh, don't the animals keep you awake? And it's like, no, not at all. I just love them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad you're here.
Yes.
You could be a fire engine, believe me.
Absolutely. It's a dangerous little game to play, when I do find myself in full immersion in the natural world, and opening up all the doors that I've been trained to close, throughout my life. And no, not that door. No, we don't want to go in there, because otherwise we'll feel this. And the natural space and the great mother, she welcomes it all. It doesn't matter how you show up. It doesn't matter what clothes you wear. It doesn't matter how you're feeling when you walk into a natural space. It's, she is the great container that holds us unconditionally. And you know, having the many layers of masks that we put on when we have to go into an urban environment, and you're absolutely right, we do. All of that doesn't matter. And as we slowly unpeel those layers in a natural space, a big part of the remembering is also, how do we balance the both worlds? Because a lot of us do live in urban cities, and maybe we live in the edge of those places, like we do in Hong Kong. And so coming back in after a beautiful day immersed in, you know, waterfalls in Hong Kong and feeling so open, I have to be quite careful with coming back to the city and getting on the MTR and being surrounded by all of these people and receiving, you know, more than just, the emotional energy that's coming off from the city, the pace. It can be, exactly as you said, a really vulnerable process. And yet sometimes when you're in an urban environment for so long, it takes longer when you get out into a natural space to let those layers go. But I find that the more and more I do it, and have done over the years, it's, you know, it's not like in winter now where you have to like, oh God, I've got to take off my jacket. And then there's like a million layers of clothes that I need to take off. It becomes much more seamless now. But coming back into the urban environment, that's tricky. It's still tricky for me.
Okay, I want to get to the bit where you meet your teacher and the change of. I mean, I don't know if this is there, but I just assume it must be. So, do you want to take me there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had many teachers, and but really, you know, continuing on from the story of the point where I realized, as important as education is, the journey that I'm feeling guided into is that facilitation of reconnection. And it's been, you know, it's as they say, when you become open, then the universe is conspiring to lay down everything that you need on this path. And I really did feel like that in that moment, that I recognized that connection is more important for me at this time than the work of education. I went to India and I studied a life coaching training, and I had incredible teachers there, where for the very first time in a human to human setting, I experienced unconditional acceptance, and I had never felt that before. And I realized at that point that that's what I receive when I go out to nature, that unconditional acceptance, and how powerful it is for us to hold that space for each other in an urban or in a human setting. And again, up until that point, really, like for me, humans were the problem. Humans were the stain. Humans were the virus on this planet. And you know, how dare we treat this living earth in this particular way? And that was my environmental activism, was I want to protect the planet. And I remember very clearly there was a moment where I was in a coaching practice. I was in a dual. So I was with a practice client who was a fellow student. And I remember as I was coaching her, I heard this voice, or this knowing, as I was responding with, you know, open-ended questions and holding space, where she was really talking about how anxious she was feeling in the state of, you know, the planet and the environmental crisis. And a voice that was coming in was, how dare you? How dare you? And I was like, gosh, what's that coming from? And what does that mean? Who's saying that? And I realized later on that it was Gaia. It was Mama Gaia saying, how dare you think that you are going to protect me? And it was a really stern voice of, I don't need your pity. I don't need your sympathy. I'm fine. And to put myself up on a pedestal of feeling like I can do this, I can fix this, I can make a difference, I can have an impact. That was such a strong need of mine again, having worked also in these in charities and NGOs, it's such a common thread of, we need to make an impact, we need to make a difference, all coming from the very best places, that it was also coming from a very egoic place. And as soon as I heard that voice, I stepped in the same feeling of when my hand slid down that fire poker and the earth taught me a lesson and was like,
wow,
no, I don't need you to do that.
That's beautiful that you've
And
connected those two.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And was that the first and the last time that Gaia spoke to you?
No, there was, so one of my favorite, if I'm allowed to have favorites, one of my favorite teachers is Satya Kumar. And I call him my environmental Gandhi, because he is such a beautiful way, in the same way that Gandhi was able to capture in one little sentence, the power of words and the metaphor that he was bringing. Satish would do that I felt in a way of reverence for the earth. And I remember asking, well, I was on a retreat where he came to Hong Kong, 7 years ago. And it was 5 days spent with him, and it was just a dream, a complete dream to sit with him with all that time. And every morning before the start of the day, I would take myself on a walk. Get up at 6 o'clock, go for a walk when it was still a bit dark, and would come back. And on the very final night, was surrounded by all of this wisdom that he'd been sharing. And I thought, I really want a way to capture and hold in some sort of a way, so I can remember and just not let it dissipate as soon as I step back into, the real world. And so that night before I went to bed, I asked my dreams. I said, please, dreams, will you help me capture something in a way of, where I can hold this and take this with me when I leave this place. And I dreamed a dream. I woke up in the middle of the night, like with that feeling of, oh, wow, I can't believe, like, my dream actually gave me this metaphor that held everything that I was receiving. And I thought, oh, Jasmine, you better write it down, otherwise you might forget it. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to forget this. My mind was like blown. So I fell back to sleep, confident that in the morning I would still have that reminder. I woke up and completely forgot what the dream was.
Wow.
And so I was like, all right, what a shame, and took myself out on my walk. And that particular morning, a friend of mine decided to join me. And so we were going down this walk, and as we were going through this trail, there was bamboo grass growing along the sides. And so I plucked a bamboo grass, and I was showing her how to whistle through the bamboo grass. And so we were whistling, or I was whistling with the bamboo grass, and it makes a really high-pitched squeaking sound.
Done it.
And yeah, the sound. And whenever I whistled, I would hear somewhere in the distance, somewhere behind us on the trail, that there was another whistle. And I thought, oh, maybe someone else is whistling on the trail, and someone's, come for a walk this early as well. And we kept moving along and whistling. And every time I whistled, there would be the same whistle in the distance, but there was nobody there. So I started to get a little bit freaked out. Like, was there someone out in the bushes just like whistling with us?
Stalking you,
yeah. And so anyway, came back up, and as we were coming up along the trail, heard the same sound again every time I whistled, and realized that it was just when the trees were, when the wind was blowing, and there were certain branches of trees that were rubbing together, and it made a squeaking sound. And I thought, oh, how cool. And started the morning with Satish, and the very first poem that he read was about rivers. And I started to have this feeling of, oh, hang on, that deja vu feeling of like, wait, there was something about rivers in my dream. And the next few hours, it was, I don't know how to describe it, but an explosion of something, where there were synchronicities, there were connections. I was writing things down before they were even being spoken. And Satish was talking about Prakriti and Purusha, and the matter and the spirit, and how everything has matter. Everything that has matter has spirit. And you don't have one without the other. And then he said pretty much exactly this. He said, when you sing to the trees and they sing back to you, then you know you're walking the line between the edge of the matter and the spirit. And at that moment, the penny dropped. And I realized that the trees were singing to me in response. And then I looked around, I was shaking, and I looked around at this entire room, and I looked at my friend who came with me in the morning, where I was whistling, and we realized that the trees were making a similar sort of sound. I was looking at her like, is she getting this? Is she, how come no one else is shaking like I am? But that was, one of the other experiences where it was like the perfect storm of all of these experiences coming together, and really understanding there is a very fine line, and we are edge walkers, and touching on that spirit world and the matter. We see the tree and we can judge the tree and name the tree, and yet can we see and can we feel its spirit? So grateful for all of those experiences. And
wow. I mean, that gives me goosebumps. That's a beautiful story. I'm a little bit reminded of my Taoism, and that Taoism is a path that you walk, and of course it's a path back to nature. It's a path, and meditation is feeling at home in yourself. That's it. That's all. That's meditation supposed to be. Is like, okay, just like whatever is fine. Just like, oh, I'm home. Throw your jacket on the chair and just put your feet up, and just like I'm good here. It's everything's okay. And it feels like that's what you do when you step on the path, which is me drawing a Taoist picture. You're just really connecting. It's beautiful. And people can now what I read. Now I'm dyslexic, so I sort of, I managed to rearrange every letter in your website.
Amazing, thank you.
So what I read is you do coaching for people, so that you say like the answers that you're looking for. If you'll, and forgive me, I may be completely wrong, so just correct me. If you'll open to nature, you'll see that nature solves these problems in different ways, and you'll get answers to the solutions you're seeking, or you'll get answers to the solutions. You get answers to the questions. You get solutions to the problems, and you must. I mean. Again, I go, well, it's a really nice idea, but does it actually work? I mean, does it do corporates go, we're going to send you out to the woods to walk with a young lady for a few days and come back and be flower power, I mean, you must have some anecdotes of people when they've gone and solved problems, or when they've come back and they've just changed their lives. I mean, I truly, just meeting you for the first time here, I can believe that people just go, wow, I can relax. There's something I can relax into, and it's called nature. It's called the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. It's been an interesting journey in, I suppose, like many people who are starting their own business or their own craft and work and service and offering, to discover who it is that they wish. It's a balance of who is it that I wish to work with, and who is it who's coming, who's being attracted to this work. And and so yes, there's been, it's interesting with the work that I do in not balancing, but observing how the woo-woo culture is being labeled as that, and tree hugging and flower power, and there's the cultural connotations of what that might mean or seem for somebody to somebody, and it's interesting drawing on local Hong Kong culture or Chinese culture, and reminding, you know, myself and us and the community here that this is not new. This is ancient, and cultures all across the world. You know, just as permaculture is a new name, a relatively new name, but it's an ancient practice of cultivating the land, with the land, in collaboration with the land. And the work that I offer is reminding people again of the natural world, that we are a mirror for the natural world, and the natural world is a mirror for us. And so my experience of spending time in the natural world is that messages, symbols, metaphors will come through when I'm seeking something, but actually not always when I'm seeking something, because again, nature knows us way better than, you know, it can see straight through all the masks that we have. And so whatever I'm coming, if there is a real true intention, then I might be able to strip back my layers enough to be able to see what is being offered as an answer or as an inspiration.
You know what, for me, it comes across, firstly, I love what you say about like woo woo, and people want to label it. But the second is like, I feel like what you're offering people is to drop a mask. And you know, people are able to go out there, and it reminds me so much of meditation, because meditation sometimes, I would say it's not meditation in the small brain, but the big brain, you know, which is like, they say, you know, in the Hermetic traditions, as above, so below, on earth as it is in heaven. Yeah. So I can see that, okay, I'm going to feel that inside, but I can go outside and I can still experience it in exactly the same way. And it's like potato, potato, tomato, tomato. It's like you find your access to that big wisdom through a walk in the woods.
Yes.
And you've been able to integrate that, so you're able to find it in yourself as well.
Yes.
And you offer that to people who say, oh, I can't meditate. Say, well, okay, let's go for a walk in the woods. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? You know,
and that's exactly that. And the more, you know, and, you know, I definitely had, part of my journey was dipping my toes into what feels right, and what's going to support me in my stage of the journey at the moment. And I never was called to the type of meditation where I'm sitting still. And I found it incredibly difficult, like most people do. But I found myself really drawn to kirtan and chanting and singing, as a way of bringing me into presence in my body in this present moment. And going for a walk in the woods is exactly that, in the way that I'm able to connect to that big, wild wisdom that is the earth. And I think I was reminded of a little sharing that I saved, and I hope I can share this with you. It's by Adyashanti, and I just loved it because it really captures the experience of what I felt, that it's not being the service and the offering, the work that I do, I hope is not being channeled from something within or something that I want or desire to do. It's, I feel like almost in the best way possible that I don't have a choice, that I'm being guided by something bigger, and that I'm just the vessel where the earth has dreamed me into this life to deliver this offering, and just like you said, to quiet the mind enough to listen to that calling.
Did you have a moment where your ego dropped away? I'm just curious. Just like, have you had that? I mean, I imagine you have it all the time, actually. But I mean,
yeah,
there's been certain moments where I felt like, and talking with people where the ego had just gone, yeah, oh, okay, it's all right, I give it. I'll take a walk. You guys hang out with each other for a bit. Like the real you and the God you, just a one.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can feel it in my body that I know I've had those experiences. For some reason they're not coming to mind. But actually maybe after I read this, something will come up. But it's so Adyashanti says spiritual awakening is a remembering. It's not becoming something that we are not. It is not about transforming ourselves. It is not about changing ourselves. It is a remembering of what we are, as if we'd known it long ago and had simply forgotten. Mm-hmm. At the moment of this remembering, if the remembering is authentic, it is not viewed as a personal thing. Mm-hmm. There is really no such thing as a personal awakening, because personal would imply separation. Personal would imply that the me or the ego that awakens or becomes enlightened. But a true awakening, it is realized very clearly that even the awakening self is not personal. It is a universal spirit or universal consciousness that wakes up to itself rather than the me waking up. Yeah.
It reminds me so much of Socrates, and it reminds me so much of Tao. Yeah. So Socrates was like, yeah, you got everything. Like, I need to strip away what you think you know. Because you don't know. Yeah, like knowing, and I found it so interesting. The Chinese for knowing is a mouth and an arrow, and I thought, well, it's something that shoots from the mouth like an arrow. And of course, ancient Chinese were archers. They were charioteers. They were calligraphers. They were, you had to be a scholar, yeah, to be able to write, and that means you need to do kung. You need to do kung fu, yeah. And one thing you learn about an arrow is it only goes so far, and it's just going to fall, and it's going to hit the ground, and it's lost all its power. And that's so true for knowledge. Whatever you think you know that comes out of your mouth, it's very limited. Yeah, it's going to fly through the air and make you feel good and give you some confidence. Maybe kill something on its way, and then it's just going to fall to the ground, completely used, and at the end of its. And of course, that's circular. So the wonderful thing about the Tao is it is circular. And we always say, "Zhi Dao," yeah, or "Ji Dou," yeah, in Cantonese, like I know the way. But often we don't know the way because the way is circular.
It's also reminding me of, so last year I initiated myself by having never had a rites of passage, conscious rites of passage. I, for years, had been ready for a vision quest. And last year I traveled to Australia and had a vision quest. And really, it was it was 4 days, 4 nights in the wild bush, and with no tent, no food, so fasting for 4 days. And it was the chance to strip away, to let go, to fast not only from food, but to fast from the world that we think we know, or the version of ourselves that we think we know, and allow something else to enter. And one of the ways that my teachers and my protectors put it was that, Vision Quest is a way to remember is a way to remember who we were supposed to be before the world got its hands on us. And that idea that, again, that the earth dreamed each of us into being, into this life. And we're coming back to that, remembering what is the intention of what it is that we're here to do. What is each of our medicines to bring into this life and into this world, and how can we live that life as fully as possible? And and it was a stripping away of, when you're out there all alone in the wild, staying in one place for 4 days and for 4 nights, there's very little hiding that you can do.
Yeah.
And whether you'd like it or not, those faces, those masks will fall away. And in some cultures, in Native American cultures, the translation or the understanding of vision quest means the little death, because it's an acceptance of a part of you or many parts of you that die in order for this earth, body, self, and soul to show up and do its work.
Again, I think like the losing the ego is a little death. And so do you do rituals with people? Is that one of the things you do now, or not really?
I'm in training. So I've trained to protect others in Vision Quest, and I'll be completing that hopefully by the end of this year. But what I do offer is teaching and sharing of earth skills. And so a lot of the skills that our ancestors would have known and practiced on a daily basis, not that even it's not necessarily even seen as a skill, but as a necessity to life. You know, how do you make fire? How do you build shelter? Where do you identify food and wild medicine? And I work primarily with women, again, not consciously, but as I started this, it all just fell very organically, where I found women were finding me. And a big part of my experience in having worked in the outdoor world for so many years and doing these nature camps for children and guiding large groups of people up to mountains to plant trees, it was very physical, very laborious work, which I loved. And yet again, in a place like Hong Kong, and even my mother, you know, she would be like, oh, your skin, you need to look after your skin, because, you know, it's not nice for a woman to have dark skin or patches or wrinkles. And I noticed also, even within even outside of the industry, the limitations of what women are viewed as can or cannot do are very conditioned, very unconscious, even to the point of, you know, someone would hand me the lighter bag of trees to carry. And I'm sure it was out of care and love that, here, I'll carry the heavy one because I'm a man and you carry the lighter one. All of these hidden ways in which women also unconsciously give their power away. And so as I'm starting to work with women, especially with fire, and you know, learning how to bring fire through by pure friction, so whether it was, you know, with a bow drill rubbing sticks together or with flint and steel, the surprise in women when they were discovering remembering their ability, and they would say, I don't know why I've never made fire before. And then as they think about it, they're like, oh, it's probably because, like, my dad always did it, or my husband always does it. And so it's not, you know, poo-pooing that men can't do fire, like, let the women do fire, but it's the ways in which we recognize as women and as girls, where it is that we give that away to allow someone else to do it, because we also put ourselves in that box of, no, someone else will do that, and this is not for me to do.
You know, I mean, what I'm getting is it's about giving somebody a connection, because I feel that's one of the things one of these words that you use that so expresses the essence of what you're doing is reconnection. So look, reconnection to your strength. So okay, well, that's fine. Somebody can carry that for you. Now, what about if you did it and you just reconnect with your strength and feel how far that goes? Or you can make fire. And it's not wrong that somebody else makes fire, but you can reconnect to your own ability to make fire, and then you can say somebody else can make fire now.
Absolutely.
Like you just know that,
Exactly.
And that's very. In a way, it's very liberating. You know, some people do walks over fire pits to have the confidence that they can then do things in life. But, you know, some people don't need such an extreme metaphor, that they can do things in life. As Richard Bandler, who trained that guy, Richard Bandler trained Tony Robbins, and he said, it's kind of his thing is, if they can walk over a fire pit, then they can do, I don't know, they can start a business. And he said, but actually that, you know, they don't need to walk over a fire pit to believe that they can start a business.
Absolutely.
But it works for them. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very touched by your presence, and I can imagine that people would actually just like to be with you and just, hang out with you. So do you have like a hangout with Jasmine like evening or, I mean...
I do. Oh, that's so cute to say that. Thank you. Yeah, part of the offerings that I put out is, and interestingly, it's been medicine for me, and so that's why I sort of offer it out to people if they want to join me in doing that, is to have fireside song circles and come hang out, sit around a fire, and let's sing songs together in reverence for the earth. And yeah, these little gatherings, they mean so much to me. And I always think, what is it that I want to do? What does my heart and my body want to do? And surely, maybe there'll be a few other people that want to come and do that with me, come and whittle in the woods, come in and weave baskets. It's, the remembering and like you said, just bringing us back into connection with the plants, with the earth, with the water, and they're already pulsing through us. So it's just giving them an opportunity to meet again, and I love that you brought in the Chinese characters and the etymology behind that, because it was also in discovering,
well,
that
actually, that's my story. I don't even know if that's true. It's just that
no, but it's
Taoist. It fits in with my teacher has taught me.
Absolutely, because it's the same with rest. If you look at the Chinese character for rest, it's a man, or the character for person next to a tree.
Yes.
And then also that the heart comes back into center, and our ancestors knew.
The thing is it's an inverted man, isn't it? So it's not man.
Is it? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because man, it's actually, if you think about it, it's backwards. So man going backwards means to enter. Yeah. So when which goes back to the Taoist idea of entry must require a gateway.
Yes.
And so you have the cave.
Oh, I love that.
This inner cave. Sorry, I'm channeling it right now. And so that rest, perhaps you might say, is about finding that gateway by a tree, or finding that space inside by a tree, or even by our own root, so our inner tree, our inner root. And that would be like what I would describe as... I'm fascinated by Chinese and the characters, and the fact that people will say, oh yeah, Dan Renpang is like that, but actually if you then flip it up, it's not. It's actually rule. It's not man. Can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, see,
I feel like we could talk about this forever. You're going to have to send me some more information about this, because I'm
writing a book. I'm trying to write a book. And I think you may have just given me another, because I wrote about Zhidao, and I wrote about exactly that knowledge should be a circle according to Taoists, because everything's circular according to Taoists.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it about Dao. Dao as one character is already like just the most incredible character.
Yes.
Why? And it's like, and it's beautiful because, Dao means the head and the crotch. So it's sort of saying people with their head up their ass, who are supercilious, that think they think they're going to be superior by knowing the Dao, it's already making a joke and making fun of them.
I love that.
But the Dao is obviously, there's another Dao. So people that hear the Dao, they will laugh. That's the head up the arse joke.
I'll have to share that with them, because in Hong Kong, as Shoshana is as well, we're part of a tea ceremony community, and referred to as Cha Dao and the way of the tea. And
yeah.
So yeah, I'll share that with
I
them.
was very lucky to have a Wu Wei master. My teacher was a Wu Wei master, which means I have no method.
Oh.
So there is no method. So it's the method ways are the tea ways, the archery ways, and so on. But his way was Wu Wei, so there's no method. There's just nothing.
That's the way.
This is very Zen. It's Zen. It's Zen, but Taoist Zen. So
yeah.
Anyway, I'm telling my story, which I'd love to. That would be another whole hour, and I feel like a danger of this interview is that I could just want to hang out with you, and like 2 hours later I'm just sort of hanging out and sort of I don't want to draw this to the end, but I feel like, you know, how we package things. I think everybody could definitely say I hope and I feel that everybody can definitely say they can feel you through our talk, and then they can connect with what you're really about. And I really hope that you really reach your tribe and your initiates that you know may want to join your tribe, or even just go part of the journey with you. I wish you every success. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful for me, and I'd say in a very natural way, it's very humbling to just hear your story, and thank you so much. I can't believe I thought, oh, but this isn't going to happen. I don't think like, I'm so touched. Thank you.